we might as well get started. I have 1 after 10, so uh, uh, let me read our prayer, and then David, you can read uh, a prophetic message from literature.
Yeah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen.
Amen.
So we're going to busy ourselves with things of Torah. Hi, Rabbi.
Morning, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Rabbi
How's
Noah.
Lynn doing?
Good days and bad days.
I hope more good days than
Today's
bad days.
today we hope will be a better day.
Good, good.
Thanks for asking.
Good. And how are you feeling? I know your allergies were giving you.
Oh, the rain has been blowing it away. I just commented on that. I just said that.
Good,
So,
good.
yeah, I feel much better. Thanks.
Good. And Helene, how are you doing?
I'm doing somewhat better, and I'm here. That's all I care about.
Okay, there you go. That's very good. I trust everyone is doing better. Don, you're in a new, your video is from a different view.
I am on a 3,500-mile road trip, and I'm tuning in from Klamath Falls, Idaho.
Wow.
In a motel, so I hope the Wi-Fi.
Well, we appreciate you joining us from your trip. I really appreciate that. Well, why don't we get started? And I hope, Mike Gervin, are you connected with us by phone or?
He may not be sitting there. I don't know.
He may just be listening in. I don't know, but we ought to double check with Mike. Ruth Ann, if you can double check and see if he's receiving
Let
us.
me give him a call.
Yeah.
So
Anyway, we did our prayer, and David, would you like to please do your reading?
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Marty. Today's quotation will be from one of my very favorite poets, Robert Frost. And I know that at the Kennedy inauguration, Frost was at the time the unofficial poet laureate of the United States. And he had written a poem directly for that, but he couldn't see it because the sun was shining too brightly on the podium. So he did another one from memory. But the one I'm going to do today is my favorite. It's the one that I kind of appropriated for the subtitle of my biography. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood, and I looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth, then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as far as that the passing there had worn them really about the same, and both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden back. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Thank you.
Thank you, David. That is a good, it's a good David dovetail into today's reading. We're going to be picking up with, I would say, the beginning of the long journey. Okay, the story begins at any previous point beforehand, but now the journey begins. What journey am I addressing?
The journey to Mount Sinai.
Okay, very good. What else?
journey of becoming a people.
Yes, very good. So there are two good reasons. What else?
The
Yes,
long journey to the promised land.
yes, but it's also a journey of faith.
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
And so there are other ways we can look at this. We've spoken about how do we stay let's put it this way. How do we morally stay on our path as a people and as an individual? Yes, Helene.
Faith is what you said, and to have faith and to really hear God's word for us, to hear what he wants for us, not so much what we want, but what he wants. This is the journey. When we hear that, we're home.
Very well stated too. So I think it depends on a number of different factors. We can go into many other concepts about staying on the way, the journey, but it has to begin with hope. So this is also another aspect to this. How do we develop hope? And hope, yes, Don.
Well, I was going to say, in contrast to Frost, this is the journey on a road never traveled rather than less traveled. Because the journey has the path. We have stumbled off the path many times over the centuries.
Yes, a very good point. So it's picking up anew, if from that standpoint, but finding the way back to the path, whatever that path may be for us. But so yes, Don, that's very well stated. Any other comments before we get into the reading for today?
Yeah, Marty.
Yes.
Just to remind us all of the insightful quip that's been attributed to many people, that this long journey begins with only the one step.
That's an excellent quotation. Right. Yes. Right. That is the most important, actually the most important.
Taking the first step.
Mm-hmm. You have to have that faith, hope, all of the different concepts that we've been talking about to take that first step. Very good, Rabbi. So if somebody would like to begin our reading, Exodus 18, verse 1.
Yeah, I'd be happy to if you want.
Okay.
Now Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard of all that God had done for Moses and for Israel, his people, how that the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took Zipporah, Moses' wife, after he had sent her away, and her two sons, of whom the name of the one was Gershom. For he said, I've been a stranger in a strange land. And the name of the other was Eliezer, for the God of my father was my help and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh.
Okay, let's stop at that point.
I'm glad you asked us to stop there, Marty.
Excuse me?
I'm glad you asked us to stop there. I'd like to make a comment on
sure,
the reading.
Okay.
The one of Moses's sons is named Gershom. And it's not the Gershom with which I'm very familiar. The one that I am very familiar with is, as I've mentioned before, Rabbi Levi ben Gershom, known in the Greek as Gersonides, and someone who was very much an astronomer, a scientist, did not believe in the theory of Ptolemy, but wrote many, many wonderful essays, both about science and about his Jewishness. And I'm just getting into that now. I finally was able to locate a poem from him. He made an invention, which everybody has forgotten by now. It's called the Jacob staff. And he uses that by holding one end to his eye and the other toward the stars to measure the altitude and azimuth of where the stars are. And he wrote two wonderful poems about them and a lot of prose work. But I like the fact that he was actually named after Moses's oldest son, Gershom.
Very good, very good. And thank you for all that information.
Yeah, thank you.
So we're going, when we're finished with this story, we're going to talk a little bit more about Jethro, you know, who he is and what our experiences with his name have been in years past, okay, and what we will be running into as we go into the Jethro story from a number of different points of view. So Jethro is now bringing so when does Moses, so the verse 2, if David, would you like to reread that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Going back to verse 2, and Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took Zipporah, Moses' wife, after he had sent her away, and her two sons, of whom the name of the one was Gershom. For he said, I have been a stranger in a strange land.
Okay, let's stop at that point. Who is he in your translation?
I remember him as a very, very kind Bedouin.
Okay. Is it
deeply kind and deeply spiritual?
Is it Moses that he is this verse referring to the he as Moses, or is it the he of Jethro?
I believe it is. I think it is Moses.
Classically, it's Moses.
Classically, it's Moses.
Yes. I wanted to emphasize that because some people may start saying, well, why would Jethro be, in charge of all of these different things? When did Moses send his wife Zipporah home?
I think there's different ways of looking at that. I think that one of the ways is that he had sent her home earlier to just say that God had blessed the mission and he was near that area. So he said, well, go home. And I think this is from all I can see is this is kind of a re-meeting, a reconnecting, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah. But I think that the when, I don't know if we can actually know exactly when, but it seems like he wanted to make sure Jethro knew that God had blessed him.
When did we read about Zipporah? How far back?
Ugh.
A long way, yes.
Yeah.
It's before everything. It's before the plagues. That's right. And she is going to be staying with her father during the period of the plagues and all these other things. And Moses' sons are there too.
Well, we're not sure of that. There's controversy of that.
Oh, okay. Please add
but
to that.
certainly sometime before this major journey that we're talking about, and the dangers of the journey, and the uncertainty. There is, I think it's in the collection of the Midrash called the Mechilta, where back to what we were talking about, and it's a bit like Don's comment about did Moses really have the faith to go on? He certainly
Right.
demonstrated that to the people at large, but in secret he sent Zipporah and his sons back to grandpa, just in case, because he wasn't sure what was going to happen. He knew that there were going to be battles ahead, and whatever. I forget which source of the Midrash, but there is one of those. And then Jethro comes and brings them back, to meet with Moses, because in his mind, what he knows of the attacking and marauding groups in the Sinai, he assumes that Moses and the Israelites have now been able to successfully plan for the next part of the journey.
Okay.
Or safely.
Before I ask Wendy, I just wanted for her comment, I wanted to ask you, are there more Midrash, different stories that I wasn't aware of?
Oh, I'm sure there is. I mean, the Eitz Chaim book that I'm looking at gives a summary of a midrash, of a commentary based on Arama, who's a later classical commentary, that Moses says that Moses sent, as he anticipated the troubles of the journey, that he sent not for their safety, but so that he could concentrate more.
That's
on
what I was going to bring up. Yes,
Yeah.
something like that. That's
There's
right.
one like that too.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Wendy.
Yeah, I raised it for you.
Oh, David raised his hand for me, so I'm going to beg off on here because I'm listening to all of this going, okay. So it hasn't set into my little brain yet.
Okay, thank you. And while Wendy has the floor, I'm going to add the wonder of how biblical phrases have found their way into modern literature. I'm sure all of us are familiar with the Heinlein book, Stranger in a Strange Land.
Strange Land, yes.
And which definitely comes right out of Exodus here.
Very good point. Very good point. So so now the family is sort of being reunited. Okay. But there's welcome back, Don.
Okay. I've been here all the time, but the Wi-Fi is unstable. The Wi-Fi is unstable here. It keeps shutting down.
Oh, okay. Because of that, I'm going to give Helene voice whenever she wants because of time, and I'm going to give you second chance because of your Wi-Fi. Okay.
Favoritism. Will get you nowhere.
So anyway, any other comments about this? Have we been introduced to the names of Moses' sons before?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. And I think that, Rabbi, I don't think that we've been introduced to the names of the sons.
No, I don't. I
That's
don't
right.
think so either.
And we don't hear much about them.
But it's interesting, again, that they're given Hebrew names.
Yes.
There's question of whether or not Zipporah remained as a Midianite, or whether she converted and joined the Israelites. But it is interesting that Moses, whose name is Egyptian, that he gives his sons Hebrew names.
She's the one that made sure they were circumcised too, right?
Right. Mhm.
She's
Yeah.
probably more Jewish than the other. Yeah.
Could be.
I would think that that wouldn't be something you'd really get into if you weren't. So I don't know, maybe.
Now we've seen a lot of the names that have been given, even in the book of Genesis, that the names reflect the events that were going on in the lives of the parents at that time. We don't necessarily do that anymore. We have a slightly different approach. Yes. Yes.
A very good friend of mine just had their first child
Also
in
so.
California. It's a young man that I helped get through his ministry years. Anyway, they just had their first child. And speaking of naming the child, it's a girl, and it's Emerson. As in the rock group Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Okay.
Okay.
It's very, did they take the name from that group? Or
Yes.
Oh, they did.
And my first grandson is Emery, which is also a band from that era of my kids. He's 15. So 15 years ago, there was a band called Emery and they liked it. And I liked the name. People are naming their kids after bands is what I'm trying to tell you.
Well, Emory and Emerson are both institutions of higher education.
Well, that's true.
Yes.
Atlanta and yeah, that's true. Georgia has a Emory University. Ours is spelled a little differently, but
right, yeah.
So, but yeah, I'm just saying that there is cultural things and things that are going on that kids these days are naming their kids after.
Yes.
Well, naming traditions, especially if you start talking in the Jewish community, can be fascinating. Not only named after to memorialize someone in the Ashkenazi community, in the Sephardi community, it's to honor someone who's still living. But also, yes, as Marty said, it's to remember the impact of a certain place or event that continues even to this day. There are those who specifically want a reference to God in the name, so it'll have El in there, El Eli or Eliah or something like that. And then there's also the tradition of changing the name to fool the angel of death. That if someone becomes very ill, the tradition was to change their name so that if the angel of death came looking for so and so, the angel wouldn't find them because they've changed their name.
Okay. That was very prevalent in my father's family.
It was extremely
he had four
in some
names.
communities. It was very prevalent. There's a I don't know if any of you were watching it. We just heard about it and started watching it. There's a new television thing. I forget which station, channel, portal, what called The Beauty Queen of Jerusalem, where indeed they talk about changing a baby's name after within several weeks of being born, the baby became deathly ill, and the grandma says, "Come on, we're going to go to the rabbi so they can change his name."
Right.
Yeah, and that was supposedly in the 1930s.
Interesting.
And then another aspect of that name is that it could reflect back to the transcendentalist philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Right.
It could be, yes.
Who lived by a lake, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I had a dog named Palmer. There we go. Okay.
I want to call on Don before his and then go back to Pastor Bruce.
Pastor Bruce was in front of me. He had his hand up quicker.
It's okay. All right, Pastor Bruce, you're on.
Just one more example. Some kids that are, again, my kids' age, they met their spouse in Olathe, Kansas. Their first child was Olathe.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And I just thought that I remembered that one as we were talking too. And Olathe is Shawnee Indian for beautiful. So it's kind of a cool connectional thing, but it's a place.
Can be. Yes, Don.
Yeah, it seems to me that in the past, the names were much more connected with magic and tradition and lineage than they are now. Now it's people are looking for a cultural identity more. I know my youngest granddaughter just decided to change her name, at least in use, from Tabitha to Vermont for some reason that nobody can figure out. But so everybody's just kind of going with it. But I see kids these days really looking to attach to some identity that they can relate to, and the tradition of the past seems to be much more lost. You know, there's no David Ben XXX, or there's no attachment to family as there used to be. That's the way it seems to me. I may be wrong about that.
That opens discussions in a totally different area. Okay, because, but yes, there are changes that have occurred culturally. Yes. Is that Wendy's turn again?
Yeah, it is. I think, and I'm going to give you one thought about kids changing their own names, because I had one niece that when she got into junior high, she hated her name, which is Lisa, so everyone called her Melissa. When she went back to high school, she changed it back to her real name. But now one of her daughters, who's a little bit heavy and has been a little bit bullied by the kids at school, has changed her name to a more masculine sounding name, so she feels like she fits in better, and the bullying has sort of stopped. So kids may be changing their names so they can fit in better. I just wanted to give that as a thought.
Interesting. That's a very interesting observation. So, here the two sons of Moses are very very important because it relates to points in Moses' life. And then he's remembering his two sons by that, if you will. And so when he sees his sons, he's probably remembering the past events. And these past events shaped his life. Okay. So, yes.
I don't know if you want to necessarily go there, but
go ahead.
There's also a relatively well-known comment on why now? Okay, why did Jethro bring Zipporah and the two boys to meet up with Moses and the Israelites now? Meaning now is right after the battle with Amalek. Okay, so
right.
I don't know if it's okay to turn the conversation away from where you were, but I did want to point that out at some point.
Well, it's a very important concept. Maybe it was also Jethro may have heard about what Amalek was going to do and wanted to protect Zipporah, but also maybe as a result of winning the battle, Moses is, and he's not just taking direction, but he's showing himself a good leader, who has faith in God, faith in the people, that they can do things, and maybe in Jethro's mind, those were good qualities now I bring my wife, your wife, back to you.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Right. Let me just throw in the other one that came to
Sure.
my mind. It's actually that Zipporah and the boys are the excuse, but what Jethro really wanted to do was to show Moses that not all non-Israelites are like Amalek.
That's
That
another
there
good.
are
That's another
some
good one.
righteous, compassionate,
Yes.
just, friendly people who honor their pledges as opposed to being dangers.
Oh, okay. I'm going to remind me about that. You stimulated a lot of hands going out. So first one, Michael, then go ahead, Michael, and then Pastor Bruce, and then David.
Yeah, before we go too far afield, I wanted to go back a little bit and ask about the changing of the name, especially when the rabbi mentioned in the 30s, they did that for specific reasons. And I wanted to ask, is that was it a ritual or a superstition that brought that on?
Definitely a superstition.
Superstition.
Definitely.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, Pastor Bruce.
I'm gonna have to go pretty soon, but
Oh, okay.
but the reason you might be able to see what I'm wearing on my tie today.
Yes.
The people that the wife of the husband, they were both had immigrated families from the Netherlands, and they had relatives that were part of the righteous Gentiles that had Jewish people. And they were on my second tour to Israel, this couple, and the wife is the one that's passed away. But I started thinking about the righteous, the idea of that there are people out there that follow through on what they say they're going to do, and they do something good for the Lord, for God, in from a different perspective than maybe other people think. But I when Rabbi brought that up, I thought, just helping with this service today is such a blessing, because this couple went with me to Israel, and they have the Dutch heritage that I have, and they actually knew some relatives that helped do some of those things. Anyway, just a lot of neat things tie into what Rabbi just said for me in just a few minutes. So I'm gonna have literally just a few minutes. So I've got to get going because it starts at 11. But yeah.
Oh, okay.
You guys have a blessed day, and
Shabbat shalom.
You
Shabbat shalom
too.
to you. Okay.
Shabbat
Take
shalom.
care. Bye-bye.
Yes, David. David, you're muted. Go ahead, David.
Somebody doesn't want to hear what I'm saying here.
Oh,
But
okay. You're doing
anyway,
fine.
Anyway, I think there's a very practical reason why God is having Gershom and Gershom's brother and Moses' wife together. And that is, he is preparing to get all of the Israelites together and does not want any of them to be absent, because the delivering of the Ten Commandments is about to happen. And I think he wants everybody to be present for that.
Very, very interesting. Very good. Very good. Really. So here's another way of looking at this. Rabbi, I was going to ask you a question, and got in late yesterday, and I didn't have a chance to. I didn't feel it was right to call you late at night. Jethro has many different names. We've known him as Yitro, Jethro. We're going to know him as Jether, and there are other names that come up. Are those names changed in relation to what is the event that he is? Does the name reflect something in the event?
Only to the best of my knowledge, to the best of my memory. There's another, let's call it nickname. Okay.
Okay.
And that's Reuel.
Yes, that's how we're first introduced. That's right.
He's Reuel, which is, and again, there's argument about whether there's a spelling mistake or not, but Reuel is a shepherd of God. That which would make sense that the Midianites like that also were shepherds, but usually in Jethro's case, Marty, to the best of my knowledge and memory, it's just kind of chalked off to either scribal error that Jethro somebody just dropped the O, the vowel,
Mhm.
vowel, or the like I said, a nickname, or at different times in someone's life. I remember fondly my parents and some cousins used to love calling me Normie, but I don't like being called Normie. I'm Norm or I'm Norman. Okay, I'm still the same person. I still bear the same name, but people do either refer to me or address me a little differently. That, to the best of my knowledge, that's just the way that it's treated. It's not related to, other than the Reuel. There's not any other explanation that I can recall.
Because I also found some information. I've decided I might as well talk about this now. That one line of thought is that traditionally it may have been from different sources, depending on who wrote
that particular chapter,
whether it's a P version or E version, things like that. And in the blending of everything, maybe that contributes to it too.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Well, the same thing happens, there are one or two alternative to Moses's names, that will encounter Joshua's name. So yes, it could be different editors or sources.
Yeah, I was always Mart or Marty. Okay, when I was really doing good, it was Marty. But when they called me Martin, I was in trouble.
Right. Right.
Yes, Michael.
This is just something I just thought about.
Sure.
Jewish men normally, and I would refer back to the Orthodox religion, Jewish men, I don't think, have nicknames, have more than one name, and they're called by that. And I think there may be something to do with the many names of God. God has many names.
Mm-hmm.
And so God is the only one who would have that in my thinking. So that might have something to do. It may not. It may just a thought.
It's a good point. There's one other thing that we haven't spoken about, and that was anti-Semitism. During here in the United States, it was fairly rampant during the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and some, I know my dad had to change his name in order to get a job. As simple as that. Had nothing to do with the religion or anything else in his mind, but he had to do it if he wanted to work. And so that's another reason that we sort of have left out of the equation. So the use of names, it's interesting as you go through all of the different ways people around the world get their names. To this day, when an Arab moves from one country to another, or one region to another, the name is changed. And so they may go by multiple names. And so it becomes very hard to know the relationships over time. So this is nothing strange. It should be nothing strange to us. But I just thought it was reasonable to bring up because we're going to come across in other passages different names for Jethro. Yes.
Yeah, Martin, just one last comment. It's only in the last several hundred years that people have used last names or family names.
That's right. It was always been,
right.
After your father's first name or mother's first name.
Exactly. You're Ben, Nachman ben Baruch, kind of thing. But the last names came about, as you're saying, either because of your origin or your occupation.
Yes.
Or a particular title, and that's how they came about. So that's much more recent.
Yeah, it's a very interesting ways of change. First, Helene, then Don.
Well, anti-Semitism in my life was very real, and my last name was Block. And it didn't say I was Jewish, and I was raised, as you know, Orthodox, but I've lived with a Catholic neighborhood, complete Catholic, 100%, so anti-Semitic, unbelievable. And I lived through that. But I've realized that the hearts that belong to God, it doesn't matter what you say. If you belong to God and you listen to that voice, what difference does it make in the word?
There you go. Excellent point. Yes, Don.
Two quick things. One is names are also labels. So Marty and Normie and I was Donnie. It's a diminutive, for men.
Right.
Sure.
Let's get rid of. And I can imagine Jethro calling Moses Mosey and him saying, "Don't call me that."
Mo.
So would we say?
The other thing was, my name was, my last name was obviously truncated by my parents. It was Berkowitz, and my father did that to get a job because we lived in a place where that's what you did. So survive.
That's right. So there are a lot of different things that have gone on. Good points, everyone. Thank you. Any other comments?
I think I want to say something.
Sure, go ahead.
Marty, I'm here. And Normie, and all these early names that the children themselves decide what they want to be called. They're not, they don't, the children themselves have some kind of a connection to their inner souls, someplace, and they know who they are. The children really do. I believe that. That's because Marty and Normie, what's wrong with Normie? Why can't I call you Normie? You don't like it, huh?
You can. Absolutely, Dr. Fields. You have my permission.
That was good.
Well, guess what? They used to call me Leanie, so that's fine. Thank you for sharing.
And actually, I have a daughter-in-law who insists on calling me Normie also. I'm not sure why.
I get a kick out of it. We could go into all of the names we've been called throughout the years.
Let's not.
Oh, golly. But anyway, David, or would you care to please read on?
Certainly, we are now
verse 5.
Verse 5, all righty. If I can find it. And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came with his sons and his wife unto Moses into the wilderness where he was encamped at the mount of God. And he said unto Moses, I, thy father-in-law Jethro, am coming unto thee, and thy wife, and your 2 sons with her. And Moses went out to meet his father-in-law, and bowed down and kissed him. And they asked each other of their welfare, and they came into the tent. And Moses
Okay, let's stop at that point. Any comments about what was just read?
Yeah, why each time does it have to be Jethro, the father-in-law?
Mm-hmm.
We already know who he is.
That's right. Well, they want us to remember that, obviously. So there's got to be so Jethro is more, but could Jethro possibly be more than a father-in-law? Well, okay. Don had his hand up first and then put it down, and then Suzanne.
Just a question.
And then Grace.
The question about the term Mount of God. I wonder what the Hebrew is for that and whether that's introduced as a new term, because I hadn't seen that before.
No, it's definitely considered Mount Sinai is the Mount of God. I don't remember if this is the first time that it's referred to that way, but it will be several times in the future. If not, the Arabs refer to it as Jebel Musa, as Mount Moses, rather than the Mount of God, because Muhammad had nothing to do in his life whatsoever with Sinai. So they don't refer to it as the Mount of God, they refer to it as the Mount of Moses.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, Suzanne.
I just had a question that maybe Rabbi could answer. With our English phrase, father-in-law, I was wondering what the phrase was in the Hebrew.
Chotain is the Hebrew word, and it comes from, it's just different vowels from the same word as groom. So groom is a chatan, and the father-in-law is a chotain.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's one of those, since the Torah is written without vowels, it's one of those words that you have to understand in context.
Okay.
Okay, because Jethro wouldn't be the groom of Moses, so it had to.
Oh, no, but
yeah.
Father of the groom.
Well, we already know his father's name is Amram, so it wouldn't.
Oh, right. What am I saying? Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that.
Okay.
It's early.
That's okay. Grace, you were going to say something.
In regards to your question about Jethro, and I think it's just a matter of mutual respect. Jethro showing his respect to Moses, and Moses is equally respectful of who Jethro is and represents, and showing them in sort of a unity together as an example to all the people and to God, because this is a merging of tribes here, I believe. And, there's only a few people that are really understanding what the Mount of God is about to give them. And those two get it. And my mind's eye and my thought is that the two of them working together, they understand what it is about to come up with the past. That's all I just wanted to say.
There's another, it's excellent. There's another concept that Yitro is considered a Midianite priest. Okay. And the Sidra, and that is one of the, one of the things I don't know. Any comments about that?
I'm sorry, Margie, I didn't understand the
Okay,
question.
well, it's implied also that he's called a Midianite priest.
Right.
And the term, which is interesting, that Jethro, a new weekly portion or sidra named Yitro, starts with this verse. Yitro starts with this verse. It is noteworthy that the Decalogue is included in this sidra, named after a Midianite priest.
Okay, all right.
Which I think is an interesting comment here.
Yeah, Jethro gets a Torah portion named after him. Moses does not.
Mm-hmm.
Nor does Abraham.
Or any of the none of the patriarchs. It's what is going on. This is, I think, a very unique, unique recognition. It really puts him quite, he phases in and out of the overall story repeatedly, but to have a portion named after someone in particular is extremely unique. So there's another. I'm not sure. I think it's Arabic name, man of the universe. Oh no. I just blanked. Baha'i, man of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another way of looking at this. Yes, David. You're okay.
I think the tradition is to name the portions after one of the very first words in each of the portions,
Mm-hmm.
whether it is a person like Jethro or something else, a commandment, or Lech Lecha, or something that people do or shouldn't do or did do or wanted to do. And I think it's just part of the tradition. And it was decided somehow not to break with that, to name the portion that includes the Decalogue after Jethro, because that happened to be one of the first words in that particular chapter. That's what I think it is, although there may be more scholarly interpretations of that from the one that I've just suggested.
That's a good one. Your point is well taken. Any other comments?
Marty, Suzanne does have her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking away for a second. I apologize, Suzanne.
No worries. I was wondering if the honor given to Jethro doesn't have something to do with race, because no, I forget who it was. I think it was Aaron's wife. We haven't got there yet, but coming up, she makes fun of Zipporah, being, a different race than them. And then God punishes Zipporah, the wife, with leprosy. And I'm wondering if this isn't also an indication that God accepts everybody, that there's, in his eyes, there's no distinction between races, that everybody is important to him.
Good point.
God.
Good point. Yes, those are very important. Those last few words are very, very important. Yes, Rabbi.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on Suzanne's thought. It's a very important point. It's actually Miriam, not Aaron's wife.
That's right.
Aaron's sister.
Oh, it was Miriam. Okay.
Who makes the accusation. That's not normally the way that the Jewish tradition understands and comments on the story, that Miriam is referring to Tzipporah. the daughter of Jethro, but there are some who do see it that way.
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
all right. Thank you. So they're emphasizing again that they're in the wilderness. We've had that discussion multiple times. And with all of this going out, Moses then meets his father-in-law. He bows down to his father-in-law, kisses him. Does that remind you any of an event that occurred in the book of Genesis? Only there's a different reason. But excuse me?
Jacob and Esau.
That's right. They're doing the identical thing here. And so, but in this case, I would say that both men are exhibiting grace, thoughtfulness, kindness, caring, and it's not just deferring of bowing low because the other one may be stronger, but both are exhibiting the same qualities. And maybe that's part of the story too, that even though you're going to be in charge, you have to have a little humbleness, if you will. You have to be a little humble and recognize the other for who he or she is. So it doesn't take away from your overall status. It just adds to it because people observe that type of behavior. Okay. So any other comments about this? Because they also talk about each other's welfare, and then they go into the tent. So does anyone else want to read, or David, should we go ahead, David? Okay.
Okay. And Moses told his father-in-law all that the Lord had done unto Pharaoh and to the Egyptians for Israel's sake, all the travail that had come upon them by the way, and how the Lord delivered them. And Jethro rejoiced for all the goodness which the Lord had done to Israel, in that he had delivered them out of the hand of the Egyptians. And Jethro said, Blessed be the Lord, who hath delivered you out of the land of the Egyptians, out of the hand of Pharaoh, who hath delivered the people from under the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods. Yea, for that they dealt proudly against them. And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took a burnt offering and sacrifices for God. And Aaron came, and all the elders of Israel, to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law before God.
Okay, let's stop at that point. Any comments? Yes, Don.
Question. Jethro was coming from Uru, where the Midianites lived, and it seems amazing that, I mean, that's not that far from where the Pharaoh's residence was. It seems amazing that he did not know of these colossal plagues that happened, in that same region, that he had to hear it from Moses. I don't know if it could be that local.
It doesn't say. I'm not going to be a skeptic because maybe it's also a test from Moses. If you already, let's assume for a second, just for a second, you make the assumption that Jethro already knows all of this. Is this also a test for Moses that he's not going to say, I did it, that he's, is he really a man of God? Is Moses going to exaggerate or cut it short for one reason or another? Or is he going to be honest in the telling of the story, the way he's supposed to remember it as per the instruction for the Passover, the Seder?
Mhm.
So there may be other ideas. I'm trying to toss a few out. People may have some other ideas. And at the same time, let's take it from the other direction. Maybe he was so busy on those days that he never knew what went on. You could argue it from that standpoint too, and say, okay, how did all this happen? Okay, and if you were going to narrate a story, would it be important to say, I heard that, ... tell me about it? Or in your own words, why don't you describe what you experienced, what you did, what you experienced, things like that? Because when you use the phrase, I heard what went on, you've already colored the answer you're going to get. So maybe he's a wiser man than what we're giving credit for. Because if he said it that, oh, I know what's gone on, and what is Moses going to say? Like the kid going to school? Oh, okay, it was nothing happened. What'd you learn? Nothing. It's the same type of, you could have that type of response. And so maybe that's a better way to ask a question in general, rather than saying, than stating that you already know, or I hear that, or just leave it open-ended. Tell me about how you got here. And then you're going to find more about the character of the individual that you asked the question of. Because they will color it in their own way, not trying to find a way that's going to please the way, the way you have been perceived when you ask that question. So it's, you're leaving it open-ended. It's no different than a lawyer, okay? So what, or a psychologist or a psychiatrist, what did you do? Okay, how do we get here? And why are you seeing me? And leaving it open-ended so that you get to know more about the person, their character, what events may have shaped the story, things like that. So we use this type of approach many, many times. It's not unique in any way. And if I open the door for lots of discussion. Okay, well then, what do you see here going on? It's more than just a meeting. It's turned into more of a much more important event. And what gives you that clue? Well, the statement Jethro makes, blessed be the Lord, and Jethro recognizes the kindness of the Lord and is praising God. And now this is the whole story is mighty important, not just because God said it, not because Moses has said it, but someone who is not Jewish has said it. He's a non-Israeli has said it. And that's going to come up later in another story in the Bible. Okay. So we're seeing something else because and some of that we repeat. What we're going to read in the future, hopefully by the end of the year, or
You're optimistic.
Praising your tents, O Israel. Okay, I'm paraphrasing, but it's stated by a non-Jewish person, non-Israelite. So, and we remember that. Yes, Rabbi.
So, do you think Jethro might have been testing Moses's ego? And to see if Moses was going to take credit for bringing the people out and for doing this and bringing them out.
Yeah, that's why I used test before. Yes.
Yeah, the one tribal leader to another in that sense. But Moses answers humbly. I mean, we refer to that. That's the highest characteristic of Moses, according to the tradition, is that is his humility. And so he says, "No, God. This is what God did for us. This is what God did for. I was just an agent. This is what God did. This is what God did." And so Jethro's response is, "Baruch Hashem."
Right.
Blessed be God's name.
So it's yes, David. I'll shut up for a while.
No, I didn't want you to do that. In fact, my next comment actually deals with your namesake, Marty. This thing about the tents harks back to the very opening prayer of the service, Matovu. How goodly are thy tents, O Jacob, thy loving places, O Israel.
That's right.
And the personal part of it is that your namesake, Leonard Cohen, when he did one of his final singing trip to Israel, he began his concert with the reciting of Matovu, just because he was there, and that the prayer meant so much to him. He wanted to do that, and I thought that was really sweet and very appropriate.
Yes.
But did they call him Lenny very often?
His mother did whenever she
right.
No, but really, in a way, when you read about his life, Leonard Cohen and all of his poetry, his music and everything, it's almost like a modern day prophet. There are lots of good messages in his poetry, and I think it's worth reading something about his life. Very good, David. Yes, Suzanne.
Jethro knew Moses from way back when, so it was probably very interesting to Jethro to see how much Moses has grown and matured over the years. Probably when he met Moses, well, we have no way of knowing, but Moses could have been a little bit full of himself. I mean, he was raised as an Egyptian elite. So now where was I going? Oh, so to see him go from maybe that mindset to one of humbleness must have been really gratifying to Jethro, to see the maturity that Moses has reached. I'm guessing, I don't know for sure.
Okay, no, but it's a good thought. It's a good thought. The one of the things I know we've been talking about sci-fi earlier, and the theme in Star Trek comes to mind, where no man has gone before. Okay, and that deals with space, the stars and planets in space. And I'm reminded that the sands of the desert have been, and the shore have been likened, the grains of sand, to the number of stars in the sky. I don't know if Gene Roddenberry may have gotten his idea from this, going to all these strange planets and strange lands where people do things differently, because that's part of the journey. Yes.
I think he got it from William Blake, to see the world in a grain of sand. And I think that's where the expression comes from. But Roddenberry probably got it from Blake.
But Blake may have gotten it from an earlier source too, because of how it ties together. And so it's just an interesting, an interesting way of looking at it. I'm trying to bring in other literature only for the sole purpose that this concept of comparing sand, grains of sand, to stars in the universe, it occurred many times. So let's hear what happens next. Any other comments about things with the burnt offering? You notice Aaron is brought into the picture here, and the elders, okay, to partake in the meal before God with Moses' father-in-law. Is this setting an example for Aaron? Does Jethro know something? Or does Moses know something? I don't know, but keep that in the back of your mind. So let's go with verse 13.
No other takers?
Yes, please. David, would you like to read again?
And it came to pass on the morrow that Moses sat to judge the people. And the people stood about Moses from the morning unto the evening. And when Moses' father-in-law saw all that he did to the people, he said, What is this thing that thou doest to the people? Why sittest thou thyself alone, and all the people stand about thee from morning unto even? And Moses said unto his father-in-law, Because the people came to me to inquire of God. When they have a matter, it cometh unto me, and I judge between a man and his neighbor, and I make them know the statutes of God and his laws.
Okay. What's going on here?
I think you're right, Marty. I think Jethro might find it necessary to topple Moses just a little bit from the pedestal. Not a whole lot, but just a little bit from the pedestal.
Okay.
Anything? For what purpose? For what purpose?
For what purpose?
I don't know the purpose, unless he just wants to have fun with him. I really don't know. But he doesn't want there to be any chance that Moses is taking credit. And Moses understands that, I think.
Well, it's because we haven't gotten to the answer to that question. Okay, we will very shortly. Don, I'm going to ask you to go first because of your internet, and then Suzanne.
Okay, I'll take that. Yeah, it seems to me also there may be some foreshadowing here, because the 10 Commandments have not been delivered, and so there are no standards yet to judge the people by. So it's pretty subjective on Moses's part, and there is no law in place. So I wonder if Jethro isn't kind of anticipating the next stage.
Maybe. It's a good point. Very nice. Yes, Suzanne.
I'm thinking that Moses is trying to do everything himself, and probably because he feels obligated and he doesn't understand the concept of delegation. And that's where Jethro helps to come in. And when I saw statutes of God and his laws, I thought, wait a minute, they didn't, like Don said, they didn't get the 10 Commandments, but the Noahide laws were in effect. And that's, what people were using until the 10 Commandments came into being. I think.
Okay. No, that's good. I think that's good. Grace, you had a comment.
I'm unmuted. I was just wondering, is maybe it's the first sign of the Yom Kippur that they're, nope, not for a while. Rabbi,
you already got the answer.
I'm just wondering because they were there from morning until night, and in preparation after having eaten it. I don't know. I'm still learning.
Well,
Thank you.
I was taken. It's good, Grace. I was taken by the phrasing here. It just the response that Moses makes. It is because the people come to me to inquire of God. Okay. When they have a dispute, it comes before me, and I decide between man and his neighbor, and I make known the laws and teaching of God. Isn't it interesting that the people are not asking more questions about God, but their own selves, their own problems? So what does that imply? Yes, go ahead, Rabbi.
Well, I think you need to remember the context that not only for Moses, but also for all the people, that the ultimate decisor in Egypt, the Pharaoh, was also the God. So if they had an issue that couldn't be resolved amongst one person and his or her neighbor, or if it was a major judicial crisis, where else would they go? They would go to the titular head of the people, whom it was assumed had divine guidance. And so by asking Moses's interpretation or Moses's resolution of the issue, they were also getting it from God. I think that's now later on we will see that when they use the Hebrew word Elohim, frequently in the Hebrew text, that means judges and not God. So we need to kind of look at the context in which the phrase is there. But that's the way that I would understand this. That's not only how the people understood Moses's role, not as a pharaoh, not as a dictator, but as the one already who had the most, the closest relationship with God and could speak on God's behalf.
Okay. However, in my mind, what bothers me is that rather than trying to know something more about God's will, how does God communicate, things like that, the discussion revolves around the very issues, some of them very petty issues, that would have occurred that Moses still had to take care of because they're bringing it to him. And Moses is not going to say, go away, this is too small a question to take up God's time. So it's one of these things that he's, in a way, the people have not learned yet about that God is not like the idols they used to worship. It's a clue about a flaw in their behavior. It's going to come up very shortly. Yes, Rabbi.
I kind of wish Helene was still here to kind
Yeah.
of help us understand where in the development of the people, because after all, they're very elementary in their faith development.
Mhm.
Uh, are they really that interested in understanding God, or are they really much more concerned about, having water to drink and food to eat,
That's
and
right.
who put their tent on my land, et cetera, et cetera. As far as I can remember, whenever the people are complaining, they don't say, why did God bring us into this wilderness? Why doesn't God give us more to eat? Why
Right.
doesn't God? It's Moses. Why aren't you doing it? Why aren't you doing it? Why aren't you doing it? So I don't know if I agree that they're struggling to understand God more at this process yet. Yeah, yes, it will come, but I don't see it yet.
Okay. Any other ideas about what the rabbi was discussing? Well,
They're
if
killing the
somebody
messenger.
keeps, go ahead, David. Go ahead.
Just Wendy says they're killing the messenger.
Repeat that again. I didn't hear it.
I
It
think
broke up a little.
Wendy is trying to say that the people are killing the messenger.
Ah,
Right.
that very
Sure.
good. Very good. Now, put yourselves in Moses' shoes for a second. And if people are always coming to you with, what should I do with this? What should I do with that? It's a trap for many individuals in law, in medicine, teachers, professors, things like that. The rabbinate, other people of the cloth, okay? What can happen if everybody is always coming to you for advice?
Burnout.
Burnout is one, and that's part of what what Jethro is discussing. What else can happen?
You could lose insight. You want to give your best advice, but because of you're being hammered with all of this, you may just say something to get someone out of the way, which would be not beneficial to you or the person asking.
Okay, very good. What happens to a person who's a leader? We have all experienced different types of leader. What can happen in the mind? How would a leader feel about his or her level of importance if everyone is coming to him or her for advice?
Overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed has come up. We're neglecting another word. It's only 3 letters. Ego. Because ego can be a destructive force. And we have to be very careful. We're all prone to this. Flattery, we all love flattery. We like to be in charge. We like to be able to make decisions and like that. But that's the other side of this. And maybe part of the reason Jethro is doing this is to say you have to protect yourself from your own ego as well. Even though Moses comes along as humble, he's readily accepting all of these challenges. And yes, he's going to get burnout. We recognize that. But he's setting himself up for it because of ego. The flattery has gotten everyone, has gotten everyone something, and he feels good that he's been able to do this. So it's a potential pitfall. And so So Jethro may be doing it for several reasons here, and I just wanted to point that out. Now,
he may have learned that lesson already himself.
Yes, he may have. Remember when at the well, when Zipporah, what happens at the well with Moses and Zipporah? It's a repetition of an earlier well story. We discussed it back then.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't Moses have to come to the defense of Zipporah? Yeah. And so, so here we're talking about here's another situation. Why didn't Jethro have something to say with this? He was the patriarch of that family. It took an outsider to do this. So maybe again, it's how Moses reacts later on. He's humble by nature and like that. So, but this is going to be a test that comes up again and again. Okay, in all of the remaining books, Moses is constantly tested. The people are constantly tested. They test each other, and they even test God. They even have nerve to test God, which is bizarre in a way, because you've just had all that help from God to get out of Egypt. So it just is an interesting thing. I think we're laying the foundation here in this one passage that for the rest of the books, that we have to be careful of ourselves, if you will. So, any other comments?
Yeah, Marty?
Yes. Yes,
sorry,
Don.
my connection.
Your picture is changing all the time. Yes, go ahead.
My connection dropped, so I missed a few sentences there. But I did want to say we're witnessing right now this struggle between the rule of law and the rule of the person. That conflict, I mean, our country is built on rule of law, but that conflict has extended right from these verses we're reading now on up. And we're looking at Moses in front of 1 million people out in the desert.
Yeah.
And trying to rule through his decree, or make legal decisions through his decree rather than reference to any law that's in place.
Yes. No, your point is well taken. Yes, Rabbi.
Yeah, it just occurred to me looking back at the phrase, but Jethro's first concern is not for the effect on Moses, but for the effect on the people. He says, what are you doing? What is the thing that you're doing to the people? You know, you're not being fair to the people if you're the sole decisor. Okay, you know, you're making them stand in line in the heat. That's one thing, but you're also running the risk of not being able to adjudicate correctly, fairly, morally, whatever. And that
comes up starting with verse 17. This is very correct. That's right.
Right.
Notice that the people are also the focus of Jethro's argument, but also Moses.
Right. I mean, we usually take it just as concern for Moses and whatever, but the first thing out of his mouth is, you're not being fair to the people.
That's right. And Jethro is concerned about all of this, and rightfully so. How far do we go in playing the role of parent? How far do we go in playing the role of a ruler of a country or president? How do we go? How far do we go with a union leader, a boss, a father, a mother?
I don't think it depends on how far, but it just depends on acting and behaving in a responsible way.
You can be another way of looking at this, you could say Moses could have easily become a dictator. Okay. From the standpoint, this is the way you're going to do it, and the only way, and this is what I say, but the focus here is on the people, not necessarily him. It's what they gain, what the community gains. But but you could easily slip into that role. Okay, thinking you're better than everyone, thinking you have certain privileges. So what Jethro is implying here has many different facets. And so in verse 17, David, if you would like to read on, please.
Okay. Verse 17. And Moses' father-in-law said unto him, the thing that thou doest is not good. Thou wilt surely wear away both thou and this people that is with thee. For the thing is too heavy for thee. Thou art not able to perform it thyself alone. Hearken now unto my voice. I will give thee counsel, and God be with thee. Be thou for the people before God, and bring thou the causes unto God. And thou shalt teach them the statutes and the laws, and thou shalt show them the way wherein they must walk, and the work that they must do. Moreover, thou shalt provide out of all the people able men, such as fear God, men of truth, hating unjust gain, and place such over them, to the rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of fifties, and rulers of tens. And let them judge the people at all seasons. And it shall be that every great matter that shall bring be unto thee, but every small matter they shall judge themselves. So shall they make it easier for thee, and bear the burden with thee. If thou shalt do this thing, and God command thee so, then thou shalt be able to endure. And all this people also shall go to their place in peace.
Okay, so we've already mentioned some of this. But anything come to mind? Well, see, and the little phrase, and God be with you. Now listen to me, I will give you counsel, and God be with you. You represent the people before God. Okay.
And maybe he's anticipating the proverb that God will help those who help themselves.
In part, yes. But also, I think Jethro is recognizing some of the pitfalls in this phrase, that he can, it's saying that it can be such a burden to you, or your behavior can change, that you'll have burnout, or you'll think of yourself as someone too important. Okay, and the people will be, and the other side of it is the people will be encouraged to do this, to behave this way. And if you allow that to happen, you're going to be encouraging disputes among the people. Every little thing that comes along, rather than thinking for themselves. Yes, Ruth Ann.
I was just thinking at the very beginning of what he read, it almost sounded like Jethro was reminding Moses that he's not immortal.
There you go.
That he's got to prepare them for, something could have happened to him. Who knows,
Good point. Yes. Okay. Don and Suzanne. This time I'm going to let Suzanne go first. Don, go ahead.
I can't help but wonder if this isn't a precursor for people to learn leadership for themselves when they get to the promised land. Although, as we learn in the book of Judges, it doesn't work out that way. But one can't help but wonder if it wasn't God's intention for the people to rule themselves rather than have like a dictator king kind of person.
It's interesting because if you have enough, but that is a giant leap of faith that a human being will change his or her ways. Okay. It's not as easy as all of that, as we know, but it is. I think that's part of it. In the greater plan, I have better plans for you. Yes, Don.
In this case, though, Jethro is counseling Moses to delegate his authority, to split it up amongst a lot of other judges, but it's still a long way from democracy because it's not the people who are picking these other judges to rule over them. It's Moses. So it's still Moses's decision as who gets to call the shots here.
So he's almost like a benevolent dictator. Yeah. No, but it's interesting because to get to the rule of people, one of the things what I like about Torah,
rule of people as opposed to rule of law, or ruling over people. The phrase.
Okay, you can rule as one individual over the people using law as to justify your actions, or you can say this is the rule of law, and we use that as the basis. I use that as the basis for my judgment over the people. Okay. But either way, and this is one of the debates. I'm currently reading a book by a Kaplan about geopolitics. I mentioned some of it last week, and the book is rather interesting because ideas like this usually do not occur de novo. Democracy, if you will, how to conduct your life, morality, ethics. Usually it's hard for people to arrive at that. There usually has to be some foundation for this elsewhere. Think of children. I wish Helene was here. But if you allow things to occur in a group of children, yeah, there'll be somebody who becomes a leader. And just like in Lord of the Flies, the leader is benevolent and kind and thoughtful and everything, and then falls by the wayside to a dictatorship, a violent dictatorship, and is overthrown. And so you run into problems. Either way, it's cyclical. but it has to be, the seeds have to be planted somewhere. If we go through the history of the world, you had a very tribal world up until this event. And now there are laws of morality and ethics that are being given to Moses and the people. We know, as Don is pointing out, that it doesn't always work. But one would hope that it rises again. Well, if we go through history, it was a long period of time, thousands of years before the American concept of democracy came back to life. Okay? And it was based on a lot of these laws or rules that were handed down to Moses. So it's a cyclical process. Yes, Grace.
So isn't Jethro an experienced leader and sharing his knowledge of working with the people and seeing things that could happen or about to happen, and helping Moses understand that, you know, sometimes people can be an asset for you. You don't have to do this alone, as well as they all have their own choices they're going to make and can create havoc, chaos, and, you know, God be with you, you know, for that. You know, my idea of a good leader is always a good example. You know, the leader needs to be a good example. And that's because, you know, I've been through leadership courses. I have, you know, plaques on the wall that said I could do this and do that. And, you know, I always work with my students and ask them what they want. Instead of giving them the answer, this is the only answer. What do you think the answer is? What does the answer look like to you? And a good leader encompasses everyone, you know, for their best interest. I think that's what Jethro is doing. Isn't he older? We assume he's older than Moses, right? Doesn't he have some more experience?
Yes.
So that's all I'm thinking of at this point. So, you know, I'm still learning. Thank you.
Oh, very well said. Very well said. Yes, Don.
But it seems to me there's a little bit of arrogance on Jethro's part here, because Moses has just come through an experience which is almost beyond imagination, with the plagues and having a rod that would part the waters and leading 1 million people out of Egypt. It's a responsibility and experience that's unique in history. And so now here comes Jethro, who's been up in Ur with his, you know, governing the tribe there, telling Moses, oh, here's how you really need to do it. You know, there is a little bit of arrogance there, it seems to me. You know, okay, he's the wise father-in-law, but even so, he has not acquired nearly the experience that Moses has up till now.
Well, in a different way, he has experienced a different way of dealing with things. And sometimes leaders have to pick their battles. When do you speak? When do you take action? Do you take the same action all the time? Do you sit back and let certain things happen and then partake in battles or partake in events later rather than sooner? They're very difficult things. Is the idea to win or to create balance in the world? And this is I would never want to have to be placed in the shoes of any leader. But understanding that It is, you're going to be criticized all the time as a leader. You never make a decision that is going to be beneficial for everyone, but hopefully the majority. That's all you can do. And I think that's part of Jethro's message here too. Share the responsibility. Okay. You're also deflecting some of the blame. And let's be very practical about it. You're deflecting some of the blame. If another group of people, think that that decision was unjust, they will pick on the justice that took found in favor of one side or the other. And if it was detrimental to one group, they're going to blame that person, not you. So these are very delicate issues in some ways. In some ways, what seems obvious can be much more complex than we're privy to. And we're all too often, we tend to criticize leaders because they're too fast, they're too slow. They're just right. We'll criticize them no matter what they do. There'll always be a group of people who does that. And so that's another aspect of this that maybe that's part of Jethro's reasoning as well. That sometimes you don't get involved. Wait for someone else to take the lead. I don't know. I'm just tossing it out as different interpretations that we can have going through this. Any other comments? Well, let's go on to what Jethro says. Okay, with verse 19.
Okay, what would you like me to go back to 19 then?
Where did you leave off, David? Oh yes, you got through. We're almost at verse 24. Is that right?
It was actually 25 that I was at.
Okay.
Okay, and Moses chose able men out of all Israel, and made them heads over the people, rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of fifties, and rulers of tens. And they judged the people at all seasons. The hard causes they brought unto Moses, but every small matter they judged themselves. And Moses let his father-in-law depart, and he went his way unto his own land.
Okay. Any comments about that? Does it sound similar to anything that you know very well exists today? What about our legal system?
Well, yeah, it's the court system of local court, district court, regional court, state courts, courts of appeals, and responsible for until ultimately you get up to the Supreme Court.
Right. And sometimes the decisions are settled at lower levels. So it's not everything winds up going to the Supreme Court. And so you can understand what, the workings here maybe a little better by looking at our own example in our own country. It isn't the same. We don't have the same exact rules as other countries. Okay. Don't commit a crime in France. Okay. Because the odds are against you that you'll win, the odds are against you winning. Okay. Because you have to prove your innocence, as opposed to the justices, they assume you're guilty.
Yeah, that's Napoleonic law, I believe.
Yes.
That's based on Napoleonic law.
Very good.
Yeah, throughout Europe and I think England too. I'm not sure. Maybe in certain types of cases in courts, but you have to prove. You go to court guilty, then you got to prove your innocence.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
In a defamation case, you have to prove that you haven't been defamed.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. The rabbi had his hand up before for another reason, and then died.
Right. There's a strong argument. Let's not say argument. There are differences of opinion on the qualifications that Jethro has given and that Moses then uses. The Hebrew phrase is that these people who are to be the judges, the elders, have to be in Hebrew anshe chayil, and the commentators pick up on that because an ish chayil later on is a warrior, is someone who takes up in battle. A chayil is a soldier in modern Hebrew. Okay, and one earlier translation of anshe chayil is armed. You know, so these people who are serving as justices or judges have to be armed. But Rashi jumps in and says, no, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. The meaning is that they have to be men. They have to be men of means. Okay, they have to be of sound mind, and they have to have their own means. They have to be prosperous, if not even affluent, so that they wouldn't be subject to bribery. And there's a lot of commentary on those. It comes back later on when Joshua is choosing the spies, you know, and things like that. They change the phrase of what the qualifications are. But Rashi says, "Aha! See, I was right." You know, talking then. But the mainstream feeling is they then, it's the same phrase incidentally that's used for in Proverbs for the way that a husband blesses his wife, an eshet chayil, you know, a woman of valor kind of thing, which Talmudically they interpret that a woman should have her own resources. She should have her own identity and her own, you know, da 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 da. But it's interesting. I wanted to throw that out too.
All right. I would have taken it from a slightly different approach, that the law is more important than the individual. And the justice is fighting for that the law is preserved.
And that's the battle, you mean?
That's the battle,
right?
Yes.
Yeah, there could be some of the comments that way, sure.
Because
I just know that there's a lengthy commentary on that phrase, on that. What are some of the qualifications that Moses focuses on, not just who's the Rosh Ha'edah or Rosh Hashevet, of, you know, who's the head of the tribe.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Don, and then Suzanne.
Yeah, if I'm not wrong, I think this part of the Torah was written during the time of the Second Temple. And if so, I wonder what the judicial system that was in place at that time.
Well, it led up to the Sanhedrin, which was the 70 designated people, men who met at the temple or on the Temple Mount, and yeah, they had district courts. I don't know whether it was specifically assigned for 10s and 50s and things like that, but they did have district courts. But ultimately, cases were brought to the Sanhedrin.
Okay.
Many laws in our country are based also, I think, on the Torah, on the Jewish law.
Well, it's found its way into Judeo-Christian law, ethics, and everything. But what we're going through here, this is the foundation that leads to everything, including the 10 Commandments and you know, and at one point, I have no idea where we stand with it now, but the 10 Commandments was in every courthouse. Okay, including the Supreme Court, where it still resides in the Supreme Court. Just another word about Suzanne, your hand was up for a long time. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I had never heard the idea about being armed before, but I could understand how that could be important, because if the judge, so to speak, were to render a decision and one of the parties didn't like it, they could lash out in anger and maybe want to attack the judge or attack somebody. So that judge would have to be prepared to defend himself or defend whoever was there. I mean, it's just kind of like we have bailiffs in our courts for, you know, physical outbursts. It's just what came to my mind when Rabbi was talking about the different Hebrew words.
Good point. No, it's a good point. It's a good point.
Except, and I forgot to include this in my comment.
Oh, okay.
Jethro, no, thanks, Suzanne, you're right. Jethro tells Moses to choose God-fearing men. But when the narrator describes what Moses did, he doesn't include that phrase.
Oh.
It says Moses did as Jethro had told him, and he gathered capable men, but it leaves out the phrase of God-fearing.
Oh. Well, even if a person, you know, did have that God-fearing characteristic, that doesn't mean that the people before him seeking a judgment doesn't mean that they're God-fearing, and they could still lash out.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. But so they did. So Moses didn't. But what about verse 24? It said he hearkened to the voice. Moses hearkened to the voice of his father-in-law and did all that he said.
Yeah, but then 25, you know, picking up on what Jethro had said, but Jethro had said in 21, choose people who fear God. But then the narrator says when Moses did it, he left out that phrase. It could have, you know, just a simple omission, or it could have been,
because
telling and important.
It says able men in 25. I mean, that could mean God-fearing, but it doesn't mean that it was. It doesn't mean that it was. So Moses could have made a mistake.
Or the scribe could have made a mistake.
Yes. And the English scribe could have made a mistake. Maybe it was capable.
Yeah.
And they left out just a few letters.
Or it could have been qualified men, which would then
include
the God-fearing.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So it's one of those things we just don't know.
We can but now I'm going to ask one last question. Well, I can't ask the question.
Oh, go ahead, Marty.
Well, time, it's 12 o'clock. But maybe we can think about it a little bit. In the Druze religion, Jethro is called an Shuaib, and being considered one of those who are incarnations of the universal mind. So you see a lot of different groups of people have looked at this in different ways. Any comments about that? What is the universal mind? Does it mean that he is most godlike? Or is he sort of like a forerunner of God personified? Some groups have looked at it that way. Who is the man that Jacob wrestles with? Some people have said it's the angel of God. Some people have said it was God. Abraham speaks with a man, and then it becomes God. The angels appear as men, and then it becomes God. It suddenly shifts into a discussion between Abraham and God. The ish that Joseph comes across in the desert, the man. Is this man now being named? The concept of this man? Take your pick, or none at all.
The Hebrew, Jethro as Yitro or Yeter really means the other.
The other. From the out. But does an other have to be another human being? Or could it be a representation, like a burning bush?
Then you start to question how's he going to be the father of Zipporah if he's a bush? But okay.
No. Because if God can appear in multiple ways.
Of course.
And so here is this just another example of this concept? I don't know, but at least it may not be that important a thought, but it is something to ponder. That's all.
Right.
Yes. Please, Don, and then I'll let you have the last word. We're over time.
I'll just say, Marty, once you take us into the metaphysical, it can't be resolved.
I recognize that.
Before we go, I did have a question left over from the last session for the rabbi who wasn't there, and I don't expect an answer now, but I just wanted to throw it in and maybe get an answer some other time. But I'm really deeply troubled by God's declaration that the Amalekites need to be disappeared, because you mentioned Jacob and Esau, and I know that Esau is aligned to the Amalekites, and Esau is also the line to Islam. And to me, the declaration of genocide against the Amalekites.
No, Esau isn't to Esau is to Rome in Jewish tradition. Ishmael is to the.
Oh, sorry, I meant Ishmael. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But it seemed to me that the declaration of genocide is a permanent declaration against Islam. How do we ever get rid of that? And I'll leave it. I don't expect to take that any further right now, but it's really
it's a difficult discussion, no question.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So some other time, I hope. But thanks for letting me get in.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, announcements?
The only announcement would be that this Thursday, Rabbi is doing a session, a class, I don't know what to call it, on death and dying, basically in Arizona.
Right.
We have found, I mean, there's a lot of differences. It was a whole lot easier to die in Pittsburgh than it is out here. And just
some practical information and suggestions and Q&A.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
So it's highly recommended.
yes. Yeah. And like I told Helene, because she thought you were dealing with the emotional, and
Yeah,
she
no,
was
we
all
spoke,
set.
we spoke a little bit,
You
yeah,
spoke,
yesterday.
okay. Yeah, I advised you. Yeah, it wasn't the emotional. We're not going to talk
Right.
about
No,
how
no.
kids deal with death or anything. It's the actual, nitty gritty of what to do.
Okay.
So it
All
should be
right.
very interesting.
Very good. Thank you. Yes, Grace, your hand was up.
I got an e-blast on it, but I don't remember. Is that going to be on Zoom? Yes?
Yes.
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 I'll go
And-
back. I put a star into it to look at it more thoroughly.
We'll send it out again as it gets closer.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm
But,
still foggy, and I had surgery on Wednesday, so I'm not all the way back yet.
We wish you complete recovery.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And from the anesthesia as well.
That's the thing is that I told the anesthesiologist, I said, you need to knock me out. No ketamine, no partial. He says, well, there's two ways we can do it. I said, no, there are no two ways. General anesthesia
Sleep.
is the only way you're going to be able to get done what you have to do. So I
There
have
you go.
10 holes in my body that are now healing. So,
Okay. Well, that's good that it's healing well.
Yeah.
Any other
Good.
comments?
Yeah. Otherwise, I mean, we have a summer of Torah studies. We don't have another Saturday service for quite some time now.
Right.
Okay.
So Marty, you're on the hook for the summer.
For the
And
summer. Okay.
Oh, and one other thing, and it'll be in the shofar. We are working with a caterer, potential for the Seder, and we decided, we're going to try her out. So I think it's going to be August 26th.
26th.
Before the Shabbat service, we are going to have a Shabbat dinner.
Catered.
Try
Very
out
nice.
this caterer, and more details will be coming out. But I just thought everybody would like to know, so you could work up your appetite for
For several months. Okay. Well, Shabbat Shalom. And see you
Shabbat
next
shalom.
week.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well.
Regards
Shabbat
home,
Bye.
everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
bye.